Walk, it wakes you up. It wakes you up.
No, I just get hydrates. I don't drink water. I drink tea, I drink coffee, I drink juice, but I don't drink water. So I need the hydration. My wife, when I get home, says, "Did you drink it?" And I have to be truthful.
And tell her, no, I didn't have any schnapps this morning.
Well, almost never. People don't make tikkun.
No,
A
people do.
few do, but it's not the,
Not the minhag.
in the Alta Heim. If you didn't make tikkun, you didn't get the omelet. And the scotch had to be at least 12 years old. The bourbon had to be at least 6 years old. We had all sorts of rules.
Good morning, B'Maikia.
Old Williamsburg, right.
What, they gave you paint remover?
Paint remover. And then when I was a little boy, I remember they used to drink rye. Now you hardly ever see rye, but every morning after davening, they would pass around, they would all drink rye.
I remember that when I was a little boy, they always had chicken, and that's how I swore off whiskey. Of course, they told me to drink whiskey, and I couldn't.
It was horrible, right?
It was
Because
horrible.
they
It was
bought cheap
awful.
whiskey.
So I
Come
don't
to
drink
me
it anymore.
You can't walk, otherwise I would have you for Shabbos all the time. You're such a wonderful human being. But if you come to me, I would give you good whiskey you would enjoy.
No. I don't drink whiskey. Thanks to these balabata.
What? All right, gentlemen, let's get rolling. All right, I want to start the names. Learning sponsors. We got a lot today. The Year of Learning Friends of Nina Monester, Nechama Aznabad Yitzchak Aharon, many friends of Stephen Vigdil, Ezechen Nishmat Simcha Melech Ben Meir Leib Halevi, friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece Leah Bracha Bas Rivka, Isaac and Evelyn Blacher in memory of his sister Chaya Rachel Bas Isser. Month of Learning by Gary and Marsha Schrager, in memory of his father David Ben Yosef and his mother Freda Bas Hendel. Marsha Federbush in memory of her husband Oil Pinchas Ben Arav Shimon. Andrea and David Dolney in memory of her father Tzvi Herschel Hillel Ben Abraham. Dov Bodlander in memory of his father Tzvi Ben Yaakov Yitzchak, his mother Bela Devasha Bas Arav Dov Beresh, his father-in-law Yehuda Tzvi Ben David Nachum, and his mother-in-law Alta Chaya Bas Avram Yosef. Mel and Haran Haller in memory of his father Avram Ben Ze'ev. A Week of Learning by Judy Iger in memory of her son Yerachmiel Ben Aharon. Today we have A Day of Learning by Alan Goldsmith in memory of his mother Maita Cyril Bas Chaim Yitzchak HaKohen, by Bruce Deutsch in memory of his father Yosef Ben Leib, by Rochelle and Jerry Ebner in memory of her mother Sarah Bad Yaakov, by Aaron Meyerhoff in memory of his wife Rivka Frimet Bat Yosef. Also, we're still keeping in mind the Teretz Tzemach Ben Yaakov Yitzchak, right, and the Bachur Moshe Reuven Ben Sima Tabela. Okay, and all others that we say with Misha Barak for, okay, especially the gentleman that the rabbi referred to this morning. I don't know who it is, but he implied that it was gentleman was having serious surgery. So I don't know. And Hashem have an aliyah, cranker, fear, velti, shir, Hashem, atzliyah, l'chol b'nei Israel, a good gaben shiyah.
Amen.
Okay, no, he did not mention the Hebrew name, but I wasn't familiar with it. Okay.
Okay, so
when you act as gabbai on a regular basis, then you may be more familiar with the names. But I just do it, I'm a fill in the blank gabbai kind of thing.
You do already much more for the shul than anyone else, and much more. You give much more to the shul than they did.
Okay, Harvey is not here this morning, and I gather he wasn't in shul this morning, and Sid, I guess, has a commitment. Sid was in shul, but maybe he has a doctor's appointment or something. Okay.
Did you hear Zeb's Shiloh?
No, I did not.
And that's what's between me and you.
Okay.
All right.
It's
You know,
terrific, Shiloh.
I'm sure. Okay. All right.
I'll take your solution.
Okay, we are on Samach Zion Amud Beis, probably about Art Scroll B3, B4. Okay.
Before.
No. B3.
All
There
right,
is no B4.
all right.
I'm reading my book, 67 before.
Oh, I'm on the wrong page. Okay,
Okay,
yeah, but I'm, all right.
so we were dealing with the stories, okay, that dealt with, okay, Mar Zutra, right? And we finished up the story where basically they ran away. They went into a place where there was some sort of a furnace or something. The coals had already been raked, but there were still some embers. His feet got burnt, hers did not. She says, put your feet on my feet. Okay, why does she get the greater mitzvah? Because she explains that she is in the house and she has foodstuffs ready. So if somebody comes, she gives them directly the foodstuffs, whereas he, on the other hand, gives money and then people have to go out with the money to get the food, et cetera, et cetera.
That was Marukva.
Okay, right, exactly. And that's basically where we sort of ended, okay, on that story. Okay, so I'm picking up there. It's about
My Kulo High.
about 11 lines, roughly, right? Umay Kuli High, exactly. Okay, the Amar Mar Zutra Ba Tuvia Amar Rav. Okay, Va'am, right? So here, so why all of this?
Why did he have to
Okay,
hide?
what all about this? How do we understand it? So he says, Damar Mar Zutra Bar Tuvia Amar Rav Va'amre La, and others say Amar Rav Huna Bar Zbizna Amar Rabbi Shimon Chasida Va'amre La, and others say it's right. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochanan. Noach lo la'adam shimsor atzmo letoch kivshan ha'esh va'al yalbin pnei chaveiro b'rabim. It's more appropriate or better that a person put himself into a dangerous situation, okay, than publicly embarrass somebody in that situation. Minalan, okay, how do we know this? Mitamar, from the example of Tamar, dichtiv, himutz eight, that she was brought out. In other words, she didn't say,
Taken out to
oh,
be executed.
okay, right. Well, that's the implication. She was brought out to be executed. She didn't, she said, and they asked, who do these belong
She
to?
didn't squeal.
She did not give him by name, right? Which would have been a public embarrassment. Okay, that's the case. All right, Mar Ukva. All right, so now another story. Mar Ukva Hava Anya B'Shivavute. There, with regards to Mar Ukva, there was another poor person in his neighborhood. The Hava Ragil L'Shdure Le Arba Mea Zuze Komale Yoma de Kippura. And he was used to sending that person 400 zuz every Erev Yom Kippur, right? Okay, so what happens? Okay, Yom Echad, one day, he says, Shadrinuhu Nihale Biyad Barei. One day it was sent through by means of his son bringing it. Okay, Ata Amarle, the son came back and said to Mar Zutra, Lo tzarich, the man doesn't need your tzedakah. Amar, why? Mai chazit, what did you see? Chazai, the kamazalfe le yayin yashan. What did he see? He said, I saw that they were pouring out old wine on the floor.
It's like instead of Glade, they used fancy wine.
Okay, well, that was one possible explanation. It was to as a perfume in a sense. That was one. The other was that they used to pour it on the dirt floors so the dust and everything wouldn't rise up and everything. Well, it was a combination. Okay. Amar, he says, Mafane kuli hai. He pampers himself so much. I find who Vesuridrinhu nahale. I should double what I'm giving him. Okay, and I will send it to him. Kikan neche nafshe. And now we're still talking about Mar Zutra. When he was, I'm going to put it, so to speak, on his deathbed. All right, situation. Amar, he said, I too li chushbanai the tzedakah. Bring me my records, my report books of my giving tzedakah. Okay. Ashkach dahava kativ be shiva alfe dinare sianke. And he saw that it was written in there that he had given 7,000 gold dinars. Okay. Amar. Okay. And he says, right, Zavadai Kalile. Basically, what he's saying now on his deathbed, my provisions are light. In other words, what I need is minimal because why? The orcha richikta. Okay, because I have a long journey ahead of me. Okay.
That we know that we've said elsewhere, the money you give away to charity is what you really have. Your assets you don't really have. You could lose them, whatever. So he checks his record book and he says, I don't really have enough to get this long journey to heaven. I need to give more tzedakah immediately.
Okay, that's also a good shot. Okay, but it's different than, okay.
Correct.
Well, it's just a different shot. Corinne, remember in their notes, okay, they don't just cite Rashi.
I understand.
Okay, they also cite other Rishonim.
Yeah,
so they refer to
the pshat is just a clear, simple.
But I'm saying
Meir circumstance.
Okay, they cite Meiri, they cite a few others
so
too.
Does he,
okay, okay. Come, right? So what happens? Come bazbazei, lepalge mamona. He got up and he donated basically half his money. Hey, how is that done? Ba'amar Rabbi Eli ba'usha, but did not Rabbi Eli and Usha tell us, Hitkinu, that the rabbis made a takana, Amizvazvez, okay, one who is donating, spending his money, Al Yivazvez Yoter Michomesh, that he should not donate more than a fifth. Hani, okay, Mili Machamichayim, that this refers when one is alive. Shema Yared, right, Menechasav, okay, lest he give away so much of his money that he himself is going to need charity. Aval charmita litlan ba, but after one's passing, that does not apply. Okay, Rabbi Abba Havatzayer Zuze Besudre. Okay, another story. Rabbi Abba used to put coins in his kerchief or his wrap. Okay. And what happens? He would wrap them up in his.
Not wrap. It would be loose.
Well, he would put them in his
handkerchief.
in a handkerchief and like throw it over his shoulder. Okay, that's what he would do. B'shadei leila achore, and he would throw it over himself, over his shoulder, over onto his back. Umamatse nafshe lebe anye. Okay, and he would place himself in the neighborhood, in the place where the poor people lived. Umatzle ene miramai, and he would incline his eyes to see if there were any fakers, okay, so to speak. Rabbi Chanina hava hahu anya, the hava ragil ishturele arba azuze kol male shabta. And another story that Rabbi Chanina had a certain poor person that he used to send that individual 4 zuz every Erev Shabbos. Okay, Yom Echad, one day, Shadrinhu Nihale Biyad Betayu. And one day he had it said by means of his wife. Atai, she went and came back. Amra and said to him, Lo tzarich, ma'i chazit. Okay, she says he doesn't need it. He says, what did you see? Shame dahavu ka'amrele. We heard that they were saying to him, okay, the following, Bama ata so'ed. With what do you eat? Right? Okay, this wasn't his menu they were asking about. Okay, what happens in Samachet, and then, well, as I said, we'll cover as much as we can today. Badle Kesef, okay, he had silver, which was actually white tablecloths, or Badle Zahav, or golden or colored tablecloths. Okay, Amar, he said, Hainu de Amar Rabbi Elazar, and this is what Rabbi Eliezer says. Ba'u v'nachazik tova l'rama'in. Let us go and be appreciative of those who are who fake such poverty. So why? She'ilma lehein, were it not for them, hainu chot'in v'chol yom. We would sin every day. Shene'amar v'kara alecha el Hashem v'haya b'cha chet. Okay, they would call unto Hashem for you, and therefore it would be considered a sinful act on your part. Otani Rabbi Chia, and Rabbi Chia bar Rav Midifti, okay, taught the following. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha Omer, he says as follows, Kol hama'alim einav min hatzdaka, whoever puts aside his eyes, covers his eyes from giving charity, ke'ilu oved avodat kochavim, or other translations, or right? It's as if they are doing idol worship. Ketiv hacha. Why? Because in one place it's written, Yishomer lecha pen yihiyeh davar im levavcha b'liya'al, the Gomer, etc. Uketiv hatam, and elsewhere it's written, Yatsu anashim b'nei b'liya'al. Okay, so there they compare the two b'liya'al statements. Malahalan avodat kochavim, afkan avodat kochavim. So the same way it could apply to idol worship there, it can apply to idol worship here. Tanu Rabbanan says a new Braita. Okay, hamisame et eino, one who blinds his eye. Okay, v'hamitzaveh et bitno, or bloats his stomach. V'hamikapeach et soko, or he falsely crushes, right, his shok, his hip, his leg. Eino niftar min ha'olam ad sheyavo lidekach. Okay, in other words, by not paying attention to tzedakah and giving, okay, and wait, Michael, hold on. Okay, and what they do then is they do some sort of trick, okay, to fake that they need the tzedakah, okay, like let's say somebody pretending they're lame or pretending they're blind or things like that, right? Eino niftar min ha'olam ad sheyavo lidekach. Okay, they don't depart from this world until eventually that really actually occurs to them. Okay, going on. Hamikabel tzedakah ve'ein tzarich lekach. One who receives charity and does not need it. Sofo eino niftar min ha'olam ad sheyavo lidekach. His end is such that he doesn't depart from this world until he actually needs that charity. Okay, tznan hatan. Okay, and now we're getting to another piece. Okay. Okay.
If you have assets, but you don't have liquid assets, what's the deal with regard to
well,
taking
we'll see.
charity?
That's one possible explanation. Okay, tznan hatan. We learned there in another Mishnah. Okay, right. In other words, one who receives the charity. Okay, and what happens then if it's a situation that is not appropriate? Okay, we do not then require the person to sell his home, that clay tashmisho, or his utensils, velo, and no, says the Gemara, vahatanya, and haven't we learned as follows? Hayam ishtamesh b'klei zahav. if someone uses golden vessels, right? Yishtamesh b'klei kesef. Instead, he should use,
Swap 'em out for
okay,
silver.
silver vessels. B'klei kesef, if he uses silver vessels. Yishtamesh b'klei nechoshet. He should exchange them for a silver, copper vessels. In other words, this Mishnah seems to be telling us, yes, there is a requirement that somebody, okay, needs to sell off some of their property in order to sustain themselves rather than benefit from communal charity. Okay, Amar Rav Zevin, says Rav Zevin, lo kasha. This is not a problem. In this case where we say to sell, b'mitav v'shulchan, we're talking about his fancy bed or his fancy table. Vaha, where we say it's not to sell, b'kosot u'ka'arot, there we're talking about his tableware and things like that. So the Gemara asks, what is it that when we say his tableware, we don't have to require him to sell that stuff? The Amar, as was said, okay, he could indicate ma'isi li, that I'm despised.
Plates are
Okay,
disgusting.
despise this, right? All right. Meita v'shulchan nami amar lo mekabel iloye. Okay, regarding the bed or the table, he also might be able to say, this isn't fitting for me. It not appropriate, right? Amar Rava Berei de Rabba, and says Rava, the son of Rabbah, okay? B'mach risha de kasma. Here we're talking about a certain kind of fancy silver comb known as a strigil, okay? In Roman language, that was the Roman name for it, or the English name for the Roman object. It was a fancy kind of silver comb, but people could use the same kind of instrument, but made from less significant metal and item.
Okay. That's one shot. The other shot, it's a gardening implement. So it's like
gardening implement?
Yeah. And that it's not even useful for gardening, it's merely decorative. So sell the tchotchkes before you
but the point is that this utensil, but that is not a utensil that's found on a person's table.
No, it doesn't. All right.
Okay.
It's in his house. It's simply
okay. But this other often was found on a person's table. Okay. That's why I felt that shot. Okay. All right. All right. So what happens? Rav Papa Amar lo kasha. He says that's not a problem. Kan kodem sheyavoli de gibui. One before he was needed to collect charity. Kan la'achar sheyavoli de gibui. And the other was after it was necessary for him to collect charity. A new Mishnah. Okay, Matnitin, our new Mishnah tells us the following. Since we were talking about orphans, right? Yetoma shehesiata ima o acheha mida'ata. A young woman who is an orphan, in other words, she does not have a father in this case, and she was married off consensually by her mother or her brothers, right? V'kadvula b'meya o b'chamishim zuz, and they wrote her a dowry, which was small, of 100 or 50, okay? Kula hi mishatagdil lahotz, right? Yechola hi mishatagdil lahotzi miyadan masher ra'ui l'tinatema. Once she reaches the age of more maturity, okay, she can demand this additional monies be given to her. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says, Im hesi et habat harishona. Okay, so now Rabbi Yehuda has a different point.
Who does she demand it from?
Her brother.
The estate, from the estate of the father, and that the brothers would give it to her. Okay? All right, so what happens? Im hesi et habat harishona. We're assuming here that Rabbi Yehuda is telling us, if the father married off the older sister, and then the father dies, okay? V'yinat, right? And now it comes time for a younger sister, next in line to marry. Yinatain l'shniya k'derech shenatan l'rishona. It should be given to the younger or later sister, second in this case, okay, the same as was given for the older sister. The Chachamim umrim, but the sages say, Pa'amim she'adam ani v'ha'ashir, or ashir v'ha'ani. There are times when a person, okay, was poor and becomes more well-to-do, or there is a time that when a person is rich and becomes poor, right? Ella samim et nechasim v'notnim la. But right, and we do, we appraise his properties and we give to her. So the Gemara picks up. Amar Shmuel, he says Shmuel, okay? The Parnasah, okay, and I'm going to translate the Parnasah here is to provide her with the dowry, okay? Right? Because I found going through this Gemara that needed a clarification. By the way, Bob asked the question yesterday. Okay, so here we might see you ask the question, is there a term for dowry, right?
Parnasa.
Okay, here we would see it's the term parnasa, but nedunya also was a common phrase, sometime that was used occasionally as well. Okay, so that was, wanted to come back. Okay, what happens? Shamim ba'av. We make an assessment of the father.
What he would have done.
What he would have done at the time, given his status alive, given his status. Okay, in other words, not just alive, but his financial status as well. Okay, right, both, that applies to both life and social status. May tive, but we'll challenge this with the following braita: habanot nizonot umit parnasot minichse avihin. And notice the language here is that the daughters are sustained, in other words, they're fed, umit parnasot, and they receive their dowry from the possessions of their father. Right? Ketzad, how is that the case? En omrim, we don't say, ilu aviha kayam, kach v'kach haya noten la, were her father to be alive, such and such he would be giving her. Ella, rather, shamin et hanechasim v'notnim la, but rather we assess, appraise, okay, what the status is of the nechasim, of the property at this time, and that's what we give her. My love, aren't we talking then about parnasat habal? Okay, that is the dowry that's going to be going to the husband. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, he says, no, but parnasat atzma, this is the dowry that she receives and brings into the marriage. Ha nizonot umit parnasot katani, but it says that they are provided with food and dowry. That's what it teaches. My love, isn't it the following? Echad parnasat habal, v'echad parnasat atzma. Isn't one the money dowry going into the husband, and one the dowry that she brings in? No, that's not the case. Idi ve'idi v'parnasat atzma. Both this, the mazonos and the parnasa, okay, are part of her, okay, dowry. Lok velo kasha, and there's not a problem here. Ha ba'achila uv'shtiyah. One is in regards to her eating and drinking, vaha bilavusha v'chisuya, and the other, okay, is in regards to her clothing and garments and jewelry, etc., etc., etc. Okay, it's not. And we learn the following mission. The Chachamim Omrim, right? The sages say, Pa'amim she'adam ani v'ha'ashir. There are times when a person, okay, was poor and becomes rich, or ashir v'ha'ani, or he's rich and he becomes poor. Ele shamin ha'nechasim v'notnim la. But rather we assess the estate, the property, and we give to her. My ani umay ashir, What do we mean by poor? And what do we mean by rich? Inema ani, if we're saying poor, ani b'nechasim, that we say he's poor in terms of his property. Ashir b'nechasim, rich in terms of his property. Miklau, the Tanakama Savar, afilu ashir v'ha'ani, kemedikara yahavinanla. That would seem to be that Tanakama is of the opinion that if he were poor, that if he were rich and became poor, then he has to do what was originally, okay, what was done before for this new one, for the second one. Ha lidle, but he doesn't have it, says the Gemara. Lav ani, but therefore we can't say it means poor. Okay, financially, property-wise, ani badat. Okay, in other words, we're talking about he's very thrifty, as if he were poor. Okay, that's the point in his mindset. That's how he acts. Ashir badat. Okay, then we say he's rich in his mindset. He's more giving. Okay, that's the point. Okay, ukatani. And we teach, therefore, shamin et nechasim v'notnin la. Okay, we appraise his property, his right, and give it to her. All right. At the time,
the way he would have behaved
had he been alive,
simply on what the numbers show.
Okay, had he been alive, what would have been his quote data, his mindset at the time? That's why the word badat there. Okay. Alma, therefore, lo azlinin batar umdana. We do not base it, we don't follow after the umdana, after a guesstimate, so to speak. Okay? V'tiyufta de Shmuel, but this seems to be a proof text against what Shmuel said earlier. Right? Da amar ka Rabbi Yehuda, as was said by Rabbi Yehuda. Titznan, as we said, taught. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says as follows: Im hesi bat harishona, if he married off the first daughter, okay, yinatain lishniya kaderek shenatan larishona, he should give to the second daughter, same as what he gave to the first daughter. V'nema, and let us say halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda. So shouldn't we say then that the law follows Rabbi Yehuda's view? Amar halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda, if he had said just outright that the law was like Rabbi Yehuda, right? Hava amina, I would have said then, dafka hisiya tegali da'ate. Okay, that there he clearly revealed his mindset,
on the first
his mindset, his approach. Okay, all right. Aval lo hisiya, but if he did not marry off an earlier daughter, lo, then we wouldn't know. Kamash Malan comes to teach us. Tama the Rabbi Yehuda gives us the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda. Dazlinen batar umdana, that we do go based on the assessment. Lo shana hisiya, v'lo shana lo hisiya, and therefore it doesn't make a difference whether he married an older daughter, married off an older daughter, or he did not marry off an older daughter. We still have to go attempt to assess what his mindset would have been. That's the point, right? Okay. Vahai de Katani Hisiya. And here the fact that it taught that he married off an older daughter, Lahodiacha Kochan de Rabbanan, shows us the strength of the rabbinic view. The Afal Gav de Hisiya Vigale Date, even though he married off an older daughter and therefore revealed to us what his mindset was at that time for a proper dowry, etc. Right? Lo azlinen batar umdana, that we do not follow after the assessment.
We try to we don't go after the umdana, we go after the shaman, the actual assessment.
Okay, right. Okay, Amarle Rava le Rav Chisda. And Rava says to Rav Chisda now, Darshinan mishimcha halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda. We make a deduction, expound it in your name that the law then is like the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Amarle, and he responds back to him, Rav Chisda. Yehei Rava, kol kihani mili ma'aliyata tidrashu mishmai. Okay, it be basically in the future, all words, okay, that you darshan from me. Okay, in other words, thanks for the compliment.
And halavai, you should always quote me when
Right.
the halach is when I say it right.
Okay. Umi amar Rava hachin. Did Rava really say that? Vahatanya. Aren't we taught as follows? Rebbe Omer, says Rebbe, bat hanizonet min ha'achim, a daughter, okay, or in this case, it would be their sister,
An orphan.
okay, who is receives money from the estate by means of the brothers. Notelet isur nechasim. She should receive 1/10 of the estate. Va'amar Rava, hilchata karebi. And we're saying, is the law like Rebbe? Really? Lo kasha. It's not necessarily problematic. Okay? Ha the amdine, ha the lo amdine. In one case, we made an assessment. In another case, we did not make an assessment. Ha chanami mistabra. And here too, this seems logical. The Amar Rav Adabar Ahava, who said as follows: Ma'asev natan la Rebbe. Echad mishnei masar b'nechasim. There was once a situation where Rebbe gave her what 1/12 of the property of the estate. Let's say, okay, kashin ha'adade. This seems to be problematic, one versus the other. Elalav shmamina, but rather, don't we learn from this the following? Ha da'am dinei, ha de lo am dinei. In one case, they made an assessment. In another case, they did not make an assessment.
Where there was a first wedding,
okay,
they make the assessment. Where it's the first girl to marry, they go strictly by the math.
okay, shmamina, could be, okay. Gufa, let's come back now to our text. Amar Rebbe bat hanizonet min ha'achim. Rebbe said that a orphan girl who gets her sustenance through the estate by her brothers, no telet isur nechasim, she should get 1/10 of the estate. Amru lo Rebbe, and they said to Rebbe, lidvarcha, according to your explanation and words, mi sheyesh lo eser banot, a man that has 10 daughters, ubein, and a single son, ein lo lebein b'makom benot klum. The son gets zip. Okay,
They told that all
because
after
a
the
10th to
And
each of the
10.
daughters results in all the money would be gone. That's the question. Amar lehen. Okay, so Rebbe's answer, kachani omer. This is what I say. Rishona notelet isur b'nechasim. The first daughter to get married gets 1/10 of the property. Shniya, the second daughter, b'mesha shiara. She gets 1/10 of what's left. Okay? Shlishit, b'masha shiara. She gets 1/10 of what's still left. V'chozrot v'cholkot b'shava. And the red, then they put it together. Okay, and you continue that all the way through. Okay, let's go on. And we'll cover as much. It's 9:20 almost.
9:20.
Oh, it's
All right.
The girls get apart from 65% of the estate, and the boys get 35.
well, the point. All right, we're gonna see. Rebbe is gonna pull a little shtick over here.
Okay, what
After it's
happens?
all doled out, they equalize.
That's
All right.
how they finish the doors. They pull everything together. The first one that's
Eventually,
Later on.
yeah, but not right away. Okay, so what happens? Kol chada v'chada denafsha shakla. Each one takes his own. Okay, and so okay, why the question of dividing it up later? Hachikama, right? This is what he means to say. Im ba'u kulam linaseh ke'achat. If all of these 10 daughters got married at one
Within a
time.
very short tekufa.
Okay, we would hope. Okay, I know that
He's dead. He
that can
doesn't
happen.
care.
That can happen, that you have
Weddings. one
weddings
right
are
after
fairly
the
close
other.
to one another. Okay, I just was told of a situation where somebody attended the Sheva brachas, and at the last of the Sheva brachas,
They made the wedding.
no, they made the announcement of the engagement for one of the siblings.
Okay.
That happened to my machot.
Yeah,
That's that's why.
One of the sons, that's when they announced the engagement of my son to his daughter.
That's how bankers make a living, because the guy has to get a mortgage to pay for the wedding.
okay. Okay, so what happens? Cholkot b'shave. Okay, they divided up evenly, right? Messiah Leila Rav Matana, and this supports the view of Rav Matana. The Amar Rav Matana, who said as follows: Imbolina say kulam ke'achad. If they all came to marry approximately at one time, within a close time frame, not lot isur echad. They all take 1/10.
Each gets a 10.
Okay? Isur echad sagadatach. Do you really think each will get 1/10? Ella rather, not lot isur ke'echad. Rather, what do they say? They take 1/10
Equally.
Tanu Rabbanan, new Braita. Habanot, bein bagru ad shelo nisu. Regarding these daughters, whether they became mature but hadn't married yet, bein nisu ad shelo bagru, or perhaps they were married but hadn't come to reach maturity. Okay, ibdu mezonotehen, they lose their mazonos, they lose their foodstuffs. Velo ibdu parnasatan, but they don't lose their dowry. Divrei Rebbe, that's the view of Rebbe. Rebbe Shimon ben Elazar Omer, he says as follows: Af ibdu parnasatan. No, they also lose their dowry.
Unless they marry before there's a Bulgarian.
Well, we'll see. We doesn't say there, right?
That's exactly.
No, it doesn't say. Ketzad, how is it? Ketzad heino sot. What do we say that's doing? Sochrot lahen ba'alim. They rent themselves a husband. In other words, they
buy themselves a husband.
They get themselves a husband. Umotzein lahen parnasatan. And then they remove their dowry from the estate. Okay, estate. Amar Rav Nachman.
The girl, knowing that there's this bogus deadline, she rushes to get married.
Could be. Well, we'll see. That doesn't use the dowry. Okay, Amar Rav Nachman. Amar li Huna. Huna said to me, notice they're on a first name basis. Hilchataka Rebbe. The law is like Rebbe. Etive Rava the Rav Nachman. And Rava challenged Rav Nachman. Yetuma shehesiya ima oacheha mida'ata. This is our Mishnah, right? Right? A orphan girl, okay, who was married by her mother or her brothers with her consent. V'kadvula b'me'az o b'chamishim zuz, and they wrote her a dowry of minimal amount, 100 or 250, was right. Yechola hi mishet tagdil, once she reaches maturity, lahotzi miyadam masher ra'ui linatein la, to derive from the estate what is appropriate, what's appropriate for her. Tama, what was the reasoning? The katana, because at the time she was a minor. Hagdola, but once she's a maturity, vitra, she's able to protest. Okay, lo kasha. No, that's not a problem. Ha de machai, ha de lo machai. In one case she was protest, in another case she didn't protest. Hachanami mistabra, and this seems logical. The imkain kasha de Rebbe the Rebbe. Otherwise, we would have a problem of the two statements of Rebbe contradicting one another. The Tanya, as was taught. Rebbe Omer, says Rebbe, bat anizonet min ha'achim, the girl that is sustained by the estate of with the brother through the brothers, no telet isur nechasim. She receives 1/10 of the property. Nizonet, yes, Zonit, yes. She'enan is zonit. If she's not sustained, lo, she doesn't get anything. Ela lav shmamina. But rather, don't we learn as follows, right? Ha, the mechai. Here in one case, okay, she's able to protest. Ha, the lo mechai. In another case, she doesn't protest. Shmamina. That's what we learn from it. Amar le Ravina le Rava. And Ravina says to Rava, Amar lan Rav Adabar Ahava. He says to us as follows, Mishimcha. Okay, in your name. Yeah, in your name. All right. Bagra, if she's matured, Einat tzricha limchot. She does not have to make a protest. Right? Right? In other words, does she have to insist? Niseit einat tzricha limchot. If she has already married, she does not have to make a protest, okay, to insist, right? Bagra v'niseit tzricha limchot. Okay, in this case, we're saying that if she has matured and married, she does need to protest, to insist to receive her full 1/10%, 1/10 of the estate. Mi amar Rava hachi, and did Rava really say that? Baha, etive Rava the Rav Nachman. But didn't Rava challenge Rav Nachman regarding the following? Yitoma v'sheni le. Okay, regarding the orphan girl, v'shani le, and he taught it to him. Ha demache, ha delomache. In one here she protests, here she didn't protest. Lo kasha, it's not a problem. Ha deka midzana minayu, ha deloka midzane minayu. Here in one case, she was receiving sustenance from them, right? Ha deloka. And here in another case, she was not receiving the sustenance from the family. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rebbe, says Rav Huna in the name of Rebbe, right? Parnasa eina k'tnai ketuba. The dowry
thing. If you're gonna stop here.
Okay, that's a good place. All right. All right, I can stop there.
No, because now we're going into a whole new India.
Okay.
Where does the money come from?
Okay, that could be. All right. What I was seeing was that they saw it as a continuation of the
No, it's
discussion.
it is a
Different-
continuation,
it's a
but it's now,
continuation.
okay. If she's entitled to food and she's entitled to
To
a
the-
ksuba,
where
where
does-
does that money come